The dust swirled in the dying light of day as Willow James watched the last wagon disappear beyond the hill, carrying away another family who couldn't survive the harsh Dakota Territory. Her fingers clenched around the weathered porch railing of the cabin she'd called home for the past year, the wood splintering beneath her grip as she fought back tears. It was 1876, and the promise of gold in the Black Hills had brought many, but the unforgiving land had sent just as many packing. "They're the fifth family to leave this month," she murmured to herself, tucking a loose strand of honey-blonde hair behind her ear. At 22, Willow had already weathered more storms than most twice her age. Orphaned at 16, she'd made her way west with her uncle, only to lose him to pneumonia last winter. The sound of approaching hoofbeats pulled her from her thoughts. Through the golden haze of sunset, she watched as a lone rider approached, his silhouette familiar in a way that made her heart quicken despite her best intentions. Samuel Irwin rode tall in the saddle, his broad shoulders squared against the setting sun, his Stetson pulled low over eyes she knew to be the precise color of a summer storm. He dismounted with the easy grace of a man who'd spent most of his life on horseback, tying his dappled gray mare to the hitching post with practiced efficiency. When he looked up at her, a smile breaking across his sun-bronzed face, Willow felt the familiar flutter in her chest that she'd been fighting for months. "Evening, Miss Willow," he called, his voice carrying across the yard like warm honey. "Saw the Millers heading east." "Looks like they packed everything but the dirt beneath their cabin," Willow nodded, trying to keep her expression neutral. "Can't blame them, not with the drought and the rumors of Sioux war parties." She hesitated. "It's getting mighty lonely out here." Samuel climbed the porch steps, stopping just short of where she stood. At 26, he'd already made a name for himself as one of the most respected ranchers in the territory, with a small but thriving cattle operation a few miles west of her homestead. He'd been checking on her since her uncle's passing, bringing supplies, fixing what needed mending, never asking for anything in return. "Thought you might be needing these," he said, pulling a small package wrapped in brown paper from his saddlebag. "Got some coffee beans and sugar when I was in Deadwood yesterday." Their fingers brushed as she took the package, and Willow tried to ignore the spark that shot through her at his touch. "You're too kind, Mr. Irwin. I can't keep accepting your charity." His eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "Not charity when it's for a friend, and I thought we agreed you'd call me Sam." "Sam," she amended, the name feeling intimate on her tongue. "Would you like to come in for supper? It's just beans and cornbread, but it's hot." "Nothing would please me more," he replied, removing his hat as he followed her inside. The cabin was small but meticulously kept. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. The furniture was sparse: a table with 2 chairs, a rocking chair by the fire, and a bed tucked behind a homespun curtain in the corner. But it was clean and warm, and for the moment, it was still hers. As Willow moved about the small space, ladling beans into bowls and cutting thick slices of cornbread, she could feel Sam's eyes following her. He'd been a constant in her life since her uncle died, riding out to her homestead at least once a week, sometimes more. He'd helped her plant her vegetable garden, repaired her roof after a violent spring storm, and taught her to shoot the Winchester rifle that hung above her door. But lately, something had changed between them. The way he looked at her when he thought she wouldn't notice. The lingering of his hand against hers when he helped her down from a wagon. The way he'd started bringing little gifts: a ribbon for her hair, a book of poetry, candy sticks from the general store. They ate in comfortable silence, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the occasional comment about the weather or local gossip. When they finished, Sam insisted on helping with the dishes, standing close enough that their shoulders brushed as they worked side by side. "Saw some of the men from Black Creek Ranch heading out," he said casually as he dried a plate. "Word is they're pulling up stakes, heading to California." Willow's hands stilled in the wash basin. "Another one, that's 3 ranches this year." She didn't voice her real concern. If the big operations were leaving, what chance did a lone woman have on a small homestead, Sam set down the plate, his expression serious. "Willow, I've been meaning to talk to you about something." Her heart lurched. This was it. He was going to tell her he was leaving too. Everyone left eventually. Her parents, her uncle, the neighbors who'd promised to look out for her. Why should Sam be any different? "I know times have been hard," he continued, seemingly oblivious to her inner turmoil. "And with folks leaving left and right, it's got me thinking about the future." "You're leaving," she said flatly, unable to keep the accusation from her voice. Sam's eyes widened in surprise. "Leaving?" "No, Willow, that's not what but she'd already turned away, blinking back tears as she scrubbed furiously at a pot that was already clean. "It's fine, I understand. Everyone's got to do what's best for themselves." "Willow, look at me." His voice was gentle but firm as he placed his hands on her shoulders, turning her to face him. "I'm not going anywhere." She looked up at him, wanting desperately to believe him but afraid to hope. "You're not." "No." He took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "In fact, I came here tonight to ask if you'd let me call on you properly. I've been sweet on you since the first day I rode out here and found you trying to fix that broken wagon wheel all by yourself." Willow stared at him, speechless. She'd been so certain he was going to announce his departure that his actual words took several moments to register. "You want to court me?" she finally managed, the corner of his mouth lifted in a half-smile. "I do. Have for some time now, just wasn't sure if you felt the same way." Hope bloomed in her chest, but old fears died hard. "Sam, I don't know. Everyone I've ever cared about has left me one way or another. I'm not sure I can bear it again." His expression softened as he reached out to take her hands in his. "I can't promise what the future holds, Willow. Out here, life's uncertain at best. But I can promise you this, as long as there's breath in my body, I'll do everything in my power to stay by your side." The earnestness in his voice made her throat tight with emotion. "I'd like that," she whispered. "I'd like that very much." His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds after a storm. "Good, because I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small carved wooden flower, a wild rose with delicate petals. "Made it myself. Not as pretty as a real one, but it'll last longer." Willow took the carving, running her fingers over the smooth surface. No one had given her a gift like this before, something made with such care and thought. "It's beautiful, Sam." "Like you," he said simply. Later, as they stood on the porch saying their goodbyes, Sam's hand lingered on hers. "I'll be back on Sunday. We could ride into town together for the service if you'd like." Willow nodded, a smile playing at her lips. "I'd like that." As she watched him ride away, the wooden rose clutched to her chest. Willow allowed herself to feel something she hadn't in a long time. Hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, Sam Irwin would be the one who stayed. The days that followed took on a new brightness for Willow. She found herself humming as she went about her chores, pausing in her work to gaze out the window toward the west, where Sam's ranch lay beyond the rolling hills. The wooden rose sat on her small bedside table, the last thing she saw before closing her eyes at night and the first thing to greet her in the morning. Sunday couldn't come quickly enough. When it did, Willow was up before dawn, heating water for a bath and laying out her best dress, a modest blue calico that brought out the color of her eyes. She pinned her hair up carefully, allowing a few curls to frame her face, and dabbed a precious drop of rose water behind each ear. Sam arrived just as the sun was clearing the eastern hills, riding his gray mare with a black gelding trailing behind. He dressed for church in a clean white shirt and dark waistcoat, his usually unruly brown hair tamed with pomade. The smile that lit his face when he saw her made Willow's heart skip. "You look lovely, Miss James," he said, tipping his hat. "As do you, Mr. Irwin," she replied with a small curtsy that made him laugh. He helped her mount the gelding, his hands steady at her waist, and they set off for town, riding side by side along the rutted dirt road. The spring air was crisp and clear, the prairie stretching endlessly around them, dotted with wildflowers and the occasional cluster of cottonwoods. "My mother would have loved this land," Willow said, breaking a comfortable silence. "She always said she wanted to see the west, to watch the sunset over open country." Sam glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. You don't talk about your family much. Not much to tell. They both died of typhoid when I was 16. My uncle brought me west because there was nothing left for me in Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, Sam said softly. Loss like that leaves marks on a person. Willow nodded, surprised by his perception. It does. Makes it hard to trust that good things will last. She hesitated, then asked, What about your family? A shadow crossed his face. My pa was killed in the war fought for the Union. Ma held on as long as she could, but without him, she just seemed to fade away, died when I was 17. I had a younger brother, but he took off for California 4 years ago. Haven't heard from him since. So you understand, Willow said, not really a question. I do, he replied, reaching across the space between them to briefly touch her hand. But I also understand that life goes on, and sometimes, if you're lucky, you get a second chance at happiness. The small town of Pine Creek was bustling when they arrived, with wagons and horses lining the main street as families gathered for the Sunday service. The church was a simple white clapboard building with a modest steeple, the bell already tolling to call the faithful. Heads turned as Sam helped Willow down from her horse, his hand lingering at her waist. Whispers followed them as they walked up the church steps, and Willow felt the weight of curious stares. It had been some time since she'd attended services, and even longer since she'd arrived on the arm of a gentleman. People are staring, she murmured. Sam grinned, not bothered in the least. Let them, I'm proud to be seen with you. Inside, they found a seat near the back, sharing a hymnal as the congregation sang. Throughout the service, Willow was acutely aware of Sam beside her, the solid warmth of his shoulder against hers, the deep timbre of his voice as he joined in the hymns, the clean scent of soap and leather that clung to him. Afterward, as the congregation spilled out into the churchyard, they were approached by several people. Mrs. Peterson, the blacksmith's wife, gave Willow a knowing smile. Lovely to see you in town, Miss James, and in such fine company. Before Willow could respond, a tall, distinguished-looking man in a well-tailored suit stepped forward, extending his hand to Sam. Irwin, good to see you. Hear you're looking to expand your herd come fall. That's the plan, Mr. Harrison, Sam replied, shaking the man's hand. If the weather holds and the market stays strong. Harrison nodded, his gaze shifting to Willow. Miss James, I don't believe we've been formally introduced. Edward Harrison, at your service. I own the bank here in Pine Creek. Pleased to meet you, Mr. Harrison, Willow said, noting the calculating look in the banker's eyes as he assessed her. Miss James has been managing her uncle's homestead single-handedly since his passing, Sam said, a note of pride in his voice. Best vegetable garden in the territory, and she can outshoot most men I know. Harrison's eyebrows rose. Is that so? Impressive for a young lady on her own, he paused. Though I must say, these are difficult times for even the most experienced ranchers and farmers. If you ever consider selling, Miss James, my bank would be interested in acquiring your property. Willow stiffened. I have no intention of selling, Mr. Harrison. That land is all I have left of my family. Of course, the banker said smoothly, just keeping options open. Times are uncertain, what with the Indian troubles and the drought, never hurts to have a backup plan. With a tip of his hat, he moved on to speak with other parishioners. Sam's expression had darkened. Don't mind Harrison, he's been buying up properties all over the territory. Seems to think he'll own half of Dakota before long. He's not wrong about the difficulties, Willow said quietly. My well's running low and the garden's not doing as well as last year. We'll manage, Sam said firmly, his use of we not lost on Willow. I've got a good spring on my property that hasn't failed yet, and there's talk of the railroad coming through next year, which would make getting cattle to market a whole lot easier. The rest of the day passed pleasantly as Sam introduced Willow to people she hadn't yet met in town. They shared a meal at the small cafe, walked along the main street looking at shop windows, and Sam bought her a ribbon the color of summer sky for her hair. As they rode home in the late afternoon, the sun casting long shadows across the prairie, Willow felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in years. Yet beneath it ran a current of anxiety. She was allowing herself to care for Sam, to imagine a future with him. But what if Harrison was right? What if the hardships of frontier life eventually drove Sam away too? "You're awfully quiet," Sam observed as they approached her cabin. "Something troubling you?" Willow hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I was just thinking about what Mr. Harrison said, about the difficulties ahead." Sam reined his horse to a stop, turning in the saddle to face her. "Willow, look around you. This land has been here for thousands of years. It's seen droughts and floods, war and peace. It endures, and so will we." "You sound very sure," she said, wanting desperately to believe him. "I am sure." "About this land, about my plans for the future." He paused, his gaze intense. "About you," her breath caught at the certainty in his voice. "Sam, I know it's early days yet," he continued, "and I'm not asking for promises, just a chance to show you that not everyone leaves." As they reached her cabin and Sam helped her dismount, his hands strong and sure at her waist, Willow made a decision. She would truly try to believe in this chance they were being given. "Will you stay for supper?" she asked. His smile was answer enough. Over the weeks that followed, Sam became a regular fixture at Willow's homestead. He'd ride over after finishing his own work, often bringing small gifts: a jar of honey from a wild hive he'd found, fresh fish from the creek, a new book ordered specially from Deadwood. They'd share the evening meal, then sit on the porch watching the sunset, talking of their pasts, their dreams, the future they both cautiously began to envision. Sometimes they'd ride together, exploring the rolling hills and hidden valleys of the territory. Sam showed her secret places. He'd discovered a hidden waterfall that flowed even in the driest months, a meadow carpeted with wildflowers, an ancient cottonwood tree so massive its branches created a natural shelter beneath. It was under that tree, on a warm June afternoon, that Sam first kissed her. They'd spread a blanket in the dappled shade and shared a simple picnic of bread, cheese, and apples. Willow had been laughing at a story Sam told about his first disastrous attempt at breaking a wild Mustang when he suddenly fell silent, his eyes intent on her face. "What is it?" she asked, self-conscious under his gaze. "You're so beautiful when you laugh," he said simply. "It makes me forget everything else." Before she could respond, he leaned forward, one hand gently cupping her cheek as his lips met hers. The kiss was tender, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But Willow found herself leaning into it instead, her hands coming to rest on his shoulders as something warm and bright unfurled in her chest. When they finally parted, Sam rested his forehead against hers, his breath coming a little faster than normal. "I've been wanting to do that since the first time I saw you curse at that broken wagon wheel." Willow laughed softly. "I thought I was alone that day. You were, until I came riding by and saw this slip of a woman wielding a hammer like she was fixing to beat the whole wagon into submission." His smile was fond at the memory. "I knew right then you were something special." As summer deepened, so did their connection. Sam began staying later in the evenings, reluctant to leave even as the stars blanketed the night sky. They'd sit on her porch, his arm around her shoulders, talking in low voices about everything and nothing. One night, as a cool breeze stirred the air after a particularly hot day, Sam grew quiet, his expression thoughtful as he gazed out at the darkened landscape. "What are you thinking?" Willow asked, nestled against his side. "I'm thinking this porch could use a swing," he said. "Right about here, hanging from these rafters, be a nice place to sit of an evening watching the sunset." Willow looked up at him, surprised. "A swing?" Sam nodded, his arm tightening around her. "My ma and pa had one on their porch back in Missouri. Used to sit out there on summer evenings, talking long after us kids went to bed." He hesitated. "Always thought that's what I'd want someday, a home, a porch swing, someone special to share it with." The implication hung in the air between them, unspoken but clear. Willow's heart quickened. "It sounds lovely," she managed to say. "I could build it for you," he offered. "Wouldn't take more than a day or two." "I'd like that," she replied softly, allowing herself to imagine future evenings spent swinging gently back and forth, Sam's arm around her, watching their land as the seasons changed, their land. The thought came unbidden, but once there, it felt right. Whatever the future held, Willow was beginning to believe that Sam would be part of it. The next morning, Sam arrived earlier than usual, his wagon loaded with lumber, rope, and tools. He set to work immediately, measuring and cutting with practiced efficiency while Willow brought him cool water and watched the swing take shape. By mid-afternoon, the frame was assembled, and Sam was sanding the seat smooth. His sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle from years of ranch work. Willow brought out a lunch of cold chicken and fresh bread, and they sat in the shade of the porch, eating and talking as a gentle breeze stirred the prairie grasses. "My pa taught me carpentry," Sam said, running his hand along the smooth edge of the swing seat. "Said a man should know how to build and fix things with his own hands. He built our house in Missouri, every stick of it." "He sounds like a good man," Willow observed. "He was, straightforward, honest, treated everyone fair." Sam looked at her, his eyes serious. "He would have liked you." "Said a man needs a woman who's not afraid of hard work and has a mind of her own." Willow smiled, touched by the comparison. "And your mother," she was gentle but strong, kind of like this land, beautiful and giving but with a core of steel, had to be raising 3 boys on a farm. He chuckled. "She'd have adored you, though she might have tried to fatten you up a bit. Always worried everyone wasn't eating enough. 3 boys, I thought you only had 1 brother." A shadow crossed Sam's face. "Had 2, James was the youngest, took sick with scarlet fever when he was 8. Nothing Ma could do, though she tried everything." He was quiet for a moment, remembering. "That's when I learned that loving someone means risking loss, but also that the love is worth it, even knowing the risk." Willow reached out, covering his hand with hers. "It is worth it," she said softly, realizing as she spoke that she truly believed it now. By sunset, the swing was complete, hanging from sturdy chains attached to the porch ceiling. Sam helped Willow onto it, then sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders as they set it gently swaying. "What do you think?" he asked, watching her face. Willow leaned her head against his shoulder, contentment washing over her. "It's perfect. Thank you, Sam." They sat together as twilight deepened into night, the first stars appearing overhead, neither in any hurry to end the moment. When Sam finally spoke, his voice was low and serious. "Willow, there's something I need to ask you." She tensed slightly, old fears surfacing despite herself. "What is it?" He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I've been thinking a lot about the future. About what I want my life to be." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "My ranch is doing well, but it's lonely out there. A house needs a woman's touch to make it a home." Willow's heart began to race as she realized where this conversation was heading. "What I'm trying to say, not very elegantly," Sam continued, "is that I love you, Willow James. I think I've loved you since that first day I saw you, all fire and determination. And if you do me the honor of becoming my wife, I promise to spend every day trying to make you happy." For a moment, Willow couldn't speak, overcome with emotion. Then she turned to face him, taking both his hands in hers. "Are you sure, Sam? This life isn't easy. There will be hard times ahead, drought, maybe blizzards, who knows what else." "I'm sure," he said without hesitation. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together. That's what matters." Tears pricked at Willow's eyes as she nodded. "Then yes, Samuel Irwin, I will marry you." His smile was radiant as he pulled her close, his kiss sealing their promise under the vast Dakota sky. The news of their engagement spread quickly through Pine Creek. Most folks were pleased for them, offering congratulations and well wishes when they came to town. The women immediately began planning a wedding celebration, insisting that even on the frontier, a bride deserved a proper send-off to married life. Only Edward Harrison seemed less than thrilled, his smile tight when he encountered them outside the general store. "Congratulations," he said stiffly. "I assume you'll be moving to Irwin's ranch after the wedding, Miss James. What will become of your homestead?" "We haven't decided yet," Willow replied, feeling Sam stiffen beside her. "We might keep both properties." Harrison's eyebrows rose, ambitious. "Though managing 2 separate homesteads is quite an undertaking, especially with the challenges facing this territory." "We'll manage just fine, Harrison," Sam said firmly. "Willow's land is good bottom land with access to the creek, makes a fine complement to my grazing fields." Of course, the banker said smoothly. Just concerned for the young lady's welfare. These are uncertain times after all. With a tip of his hat, he continued on his way. I don't trust that man, Sam muttered as they watched him go. He's too interested in your land. He's been trying to buy up properties all over, Willow agreed. Mrs. Peterson said he foreclosed on the Miller place not 2 weeks after they left. Sam frowned. That's odd. Tom Miller told me he'd sold his claim outright before leaving. Why would Harrison lie about that? I don't know, Sam said thoughtfully, but I intend to find out. They decided to marry in August when the worst of the summer heat would be past, but before the fall cattle drive would demand Sam's full attention. In the meantime, they split their time between their two properties, with Willow helping Sam repair fences and care for his cattle, while he helped her tend her garden and put up preserves for the winter ahead. One evening in late July, as they sat on the porch swing Sam had built, watching a thunderstorm roll across the distant plains, Sam brought up a subject they'd been avoiding. We need to decide where we'll live after the wedding, he said, his arm comfortably around her shoulders. My place is bigger, but yours has better water access in that root cellar your uncle dug, Willow nodded, having considered this herself. What if we split our time between both, at least for now? Stay at your ranch during calving season and cattle drives, and here when we're tending the garden and putting up stores for winter? Sam considered this. It could work, though eventually we might want to choose one place to expand, especially if… He trailed off, a slight flush coloring his cheeks. Especially if what? Willow prompted, though she had an inkling of what he was thinking. Especially if we're blessed with children someday, he finished, watching her face carefully. Would you want that, Willow, a family? The question stirred something deep within her, a longing she'd kept buried since losing her own parents. I would, she admitted softly, very much, though the thought terrifies me too. Sam pulled her closer. Because of the risks, she nodded. Childbirth is dangerous, especially out here with the nearest doctor in Deadwood. And then there's all the things that can happen to children: illness, accidents. All true, Sam acknowledged, but think of the joy they'd bring. Little ones running around, learning to ride, helping with the chores. He smiled, imagining it. A daughter with your spirit and determination, a son with your kind heart. Willow leaned into him, allowing herself to picture the future he described. You'd be a wonderful father and you a wonderful mother. He kissed the top of her head, but there's no rush. We have time to decide when we're ready. As their wedding day approached, Willow found herself busier than ever. The women of Pine Creek insisted she have a proper wedding dress, and Mrs. Peterson, who had been a seamstress back east, offered to make one from fine white muslin ordered specially from Deadwood. The men, meanwhile, organized a barn raising at Sam's ranch, expanding his modest cabin to accommodate a growing family. 3 days before the wedding, Willow was at Sam's place, helping arrange the new furniture. They'd ordered a larger bed, a rocking chair, a set of shelves for her books when a rider approached at a gallop. It was young Tommy Wilson, the blacksmith's son, his face flushed with exertion. Mr. Irwin, he called, reining his horse to a stop in a cloud of dust. Ma sent me to fetch you. There's trouble in town. Sam stepped out onto the porch, Willow close behind. What kind of trouble, Tommy? It's Harrison and his men. They're over at Miss James's place, saying they're seizing it for back taxes or some such. Pa and some of the others rode out there to stop them, but Harrison's got papers from the territorial court. Willow gasped, a cold dread settling in her stomach. That's impossible. I paid the assessment in full last month. I have the receipt. Sam's expression hardened. Tommy, ride back and tell your pa we're coming. Willow, get that receipt. We're going to settle this now. They rode hard, pushing their horses to a gallop across the rolling prairie. As they crested the final hill before Willow's homestead, they could see a group of men gathered in the yard. Edward Harrison stood on the porch, gesturing emphatically while several of the town's men, including Mr. Peterson and the blacksmith, faced him with crossed arms and skeptical expressions. I'm telling you, it's all perfectly legal, Harrison was saying as Sam and Willow dismounted. The taxes weren't paid, and the territorial government has authorized me to take possession on behalf of the bank." "That's a lie," Willow called, striding forward with the receipt clutched in her hand. "I paid in full to your clerk, Mr. Adams, on the 15th of last month." Harrison turned, his expression momentarily surprised before smoothing into professional concern. "Miss James, I'm sorry you've been misled. I have no record of any such payment, and Mr. Adams assures me you haven't been to the bank in months." "Then Mr. Adams is either mistaken or lying," Sam said, his voice dangerously calm as he came to stand beside Willow. "Because I was with her when she made the payment, watched her count out the money myself." Harrison shrugged, unmoved. "Without an official receipt stamped by the bank, I'm afraid your word isn't sufficient. The territorial court has— Is this sufficient?" Willow interrupted, unfolding the paper she'd been clutching. "The receipt Mr. Adams gave me, complete with the bank's stamp and his signature." A murmur went through the gathered men as Harrison's face darkened. He snatched the paper from her hands, examining it closely. "This could be forged, or perhaps Mr. Adams made a clerical error. Either way, I have a court order based on false information," Sam cut in. "And I suspect it's not the first time you've tried this trick, Harrison. How many other properties have you seized with these so-called court orders? The Miller place, perhaps?" Harrison's face flushed with anger. "Be careful with your accusations, Irwin. I'm a respected businessman in this community." "Not for long," came a new voice. They all turned to see Sheriff Davis riding up, his expression grim. "Edward Harrison, I'm placing you under arrest for fraud and attempted theft." "This is outrageous," Harrison sputtered. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that Tom Miller showed up in my office this morning with a similar story," the sheriff replied, dismounting. "Seems he got a letter from his cousin saying you'd foreclosed on his property for unpaid taxes, when he had the bill of sale in his pocket proving he'd sold it to you fair and square." Davis looked around at the gathered townsfolk. "I've got a feeling Mr. Miller ain't the only one with such a tale to tell." As the sheriff led a protesting Harrison away, the tension in the yard gradually dissipated. Neighbors clapped Sam on the back and expressed relief that Willow's homestead was safe. But the incident left a shadow over what should have been happy wedding preparations. That evening, as they sat on the porch swing Sam had built, Willow couldn't shake her unease. "What if Harrison had succeeded? I could have lost everything my uncle worked for." Sam took her hand, his thumb tracing soothing circles on her palm. "But he didn't succeed, and now he'll face justice for what he's done." "This time," Willow said softly, "but it makes me wonder what other threats are out there. The drought could worsen. The railroad might bypass us entirely. There could be more men like Harrison." Sam was quiet for a moment, considering her words. "You're right," he finally said. "Life out here is full of uncertainties. Always has been, always will be. That's why no one should face it alone." He turned to look at her, his gaze steady. "Whatever comes, Willow, we'll face it together. That's what matters." As she looked into his eyes, Willow felt the truth of his words settle deep in her heart. For so long, she'd been braced for abandonment, waiting for the moment when Sam, like everyone else she'd loved, would leave. But sitting here on the swing he'd built with his own hands, feeling the solid warmth of him beside her, she finally allowed herself to believe in permanence. "Together," she agreed, leaning her head against his shoulder as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Their wedding day dawned clear and bright, the August sun casting a golden glow over the land. The entire community of Pine Creek had turned out, gathering at the small white church where Willow and Sam had first appeared together months earlier. Women had decorated the simple building with wildflowers and ribbons, transforming it into a space of celebration. Willow stood in a small back room, wearing the white muslin dress Mrs. Peterson had sewn, her honey blonde hair adorned with a crown of prairie roses. Through the window, she could see guests arriving, dismounting from horses and climbing down from wagons, dressed in their Sunday best. "You look beautiful," said Mrs. Peterson, making one final adjustment to the dress. "Samuel Irwin is a lucky man," Willow smiled, her heart full. "I'm the lucky one." Nonsense, the older woman replied briskly. You're both lucky to have found each other. That's rare enough in this life. She paused, her expression softening. My William and I had 42 years together before he passed. Not all easy years, mind you, but good ones. That's what I wish for you, a lifetime of good years, whatever they may bring. The ceremony itself was simple but heartfelt. Willow would later remember it as a blur of emotion, the faces of their neighbors and friends, the minister's solemn words, and most of all, Sam's eyes fixed on hers as they spoke their vows, his voice steady and sure. I, Samuel James Irwin, take you, Willow Ann James, to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. As she repeated the words, Willow felt something final settle into place within her, a certainty that had been building since the day Sam built the swing on her porch. This man, with his quiet strength and steadfast heart, would not leave. He would stay through whatever the frontier life threw at them. The celebration afterward was joyous, with tables set up outside the church laden with food contributed by every family in the community. There was music from a fiddle and harmonica, dancing in the churchyard, and toasts to the newlyweds' health and happiness. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the land, Sam found Willow sitting at one of the tables, watching the festivities with a contented smile. Mrs. Irwin, he said, extending his hand. May I have this dance? She placed her hand in his, allowing him to lead her to where other couples were swaying to a slow melody. Mrs. Irwin, she repeated, testing the sound of it. I like that. Sam pulled her close, one hand at the small of her back as they moved together. So do I, very much. They danced in comfortable silence for a moment before Willow spoke again. Sam, there's something I need to tell you. His eyes searched her face, a flicker of concern crossing his features. What is it? I've been thinking about what you said, about facing the future together, whatever it brings. She took a deep breath. And I realized that I've spent so much time worrying about being left behind that I haven't been fully present in the life we're building. Sam's expression softened. That's understandable given what you've been through. Maybe, she acknowledged, but I don't want to live that way anymore. I want to embrace each day we have together without fear of what might come. She reached up to touch his cheek. I love you, Samuel Irwin. And I promise to stop waiting for you to leave. His arms tightened around her. I'm not going anywhere, Willow, not ever. As the last light faded from the sky and the stars emerged overhead, Sam and Willow said their goodbyes to the well-wishers and climbed into the wagon that would take them to their home, Sam's ranch for now, where they would begin their life together. The first year of marriage brought both joys and challenges, as Sam had predicted. The drought worsened through the fall, forcing them to haul water from distant springs for the cattle. Winter came early and harsh, with blizzards that kept them housebound for days at a time. But there were sweet moments, 2 quiet evenings by the fire. Sam teaching Willow to play chess, Willow reading aloud from her favorite books as Sam carved wooden figures for the mantel. They split their time between the 2 properties as planned, staying at Sam's ranch during the cattle seasons and at Willow's homestead when tending the garden and putting up preserves. Sam built a swing on his porch to match the one at Willow's, and they spent many evenings swaying gently back and forth, watching the sun set over the land they both loved. In late spring, as the prairie burst into bloom after the long winter, Willow discovered she was expecting a child. She told Sam one evening as they sat on the swing at her homestead, the air fragrant with the scent of wildflowers. A baby, he breathed, his face alight with wonder as he placed a gentle hand on her still flat stomach. Are you certain? Willow nodded, her own joy mingled with the old familiar fear. Mrs. Peterson confirmed it. She thinks the baby will come in January. Sam must have seen the flicker of anxiety in her eyes, for he pulled her close. I know you're scared, he said softly. I am too, a little. But Willow, this is a blessing. Our child will be loved and protected with a mother as strong as you. His confidence bolstered her own, and as the months passed and her body changed to accommodate their growing child, Willow found herself embracing the future with hope rather than dread. They decided to make Sam's ranch their primary home, as it was closer to town and would be easier if they needed the doctor. But they kept Willow's homestead too, Sam riding over regularly to maintain the buildings and check on the land. Their daughter, Elizabeth Ann Irwin, arrived on a cold January night during a light snowfall. The birth was difficult but uncomplicated, with Mrs. Peterson serving as midwife. When Sam was finally allowed into the bedroom, he found Willow propped up on pillows, tired but radiant, a small bundle cradled in her arms. "Come meet your daughter," she said, her voice soft with wonder. Sam approached with reverent steps, easing himself onto the edge of the bed. Willow pulled back the blanket to reveal a tiny face, eyes closed in sleep, a dusting of dark hair covering the small head. "She's perfect," Sam whispered, reaching out to touch one miniature hand. The baby's fingers instinctively curled around his and his eyes filled with tears. "Hello, Elizabeth." "I'm your pa." As Sam held their daughter for the first time, his large hands cradling her with infinite care, Willow felt the last of her old fears dissolve. This was her family now, this good man who had built her a swing and promised to stay, and this precious new life they had created together. Whatever the future held, they would face it as one. The years that followed were full and rich, despite the continued challenges of frontier life. The railroad finally came through Pine Creek in 1878, bringing new prosperity to the region. Sam's cattle business thrived, allowing them to expand their holdings and improve both properties. Willow's garden became known throughout the territory, with people coming from miles around to trade for her preserves and remedies made from wild herbs. Elizabeth, called Beth by her parents, grew into a spirited child with her father's dark hair and her mother's determined nature. She loved the land as they did, following Sam on his rounds of the ranch as soon as she could sit a horse, helping Willow in the garden when she was barely tall enough to reach the plants. When Beth was 3, Willow gave birth to a son, James Samuel Irwin, named for Sam's father and brother. 2 years later, another daughter joined their family, Grace Mary Irwin. With her mother's honey blonde hair and her father's storm gray eyes, through it all, the porch swings Sam had built remained the heart of both their homes. It was where they sat in the evenings after the children were asleep, discussing the day's events and making plans for the future. It was where Sam taught Beth to read, where little James took his first steps, where Grace learned to braid her mother's hair. One evening in the summer of 1884, as they sat on the swing at what they now called the old homestead, watching their children chase fireflies in the gathering dusk, Sam turned to Willow with a thoughtful expression. "You ever think about how different things might have been?" he asked. "If I hadn't ridden by that day and seen you fighting with that wagon wheel," Willow smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder as the swing swayed gently. "Sometimes. I was so certain back then that everyone I cared about would eventually leave. I nearly pushed you away because of it." Sam's arm tightened around her. "I'm glad you didn't. So am I." She was quiet for a moment, watching Beth show her younger siblings how to cup their hands around the glowing insects. "You know, when you built this swing, I think that was the first time I truly believed you might stay." "It seemed like such a permanent thing to do," Sam chuckled. "That was the idea. I wanted you to have a physical reminder that I wasn't going anywhere, something solid you could see and touch. It worked," Willow said softly. "Every time I sit here, I remember that moment when I realized you were building not just a swing, but a future." As the twilight deepened into night and the stars emerged overhead, their children eventually tired of their game and came to join them on the porch. Beth climbed onto Sam's lap while James and Grace squeezed in on either side of Willow, the swing creaking slightly under the added weight. "Tell us a story, Pa," Beth requested, her small face earnest in the fading light. Sam smiled, looking over their heads at Willow. "How about the story of a stubborn young woman who thought she had to face the world alone, and the cowboy who built her a swing?" "And then what happened?" James asked, his gray eyes so like his father's wide with interest. "And then," Willow continued, her heart full as she gazed at her family, "the cowboy sat beside her on that swing, and he never left." Never ever, Grace asked sleepily, her head drooping against Willow's side. Sam reached across the children to take Willow's hand, his touch as reassuring and familiar as the gentle rhythm of the swing beneath them. Never ever, he confirmed. He sat beside her forever. And as they swayed together on the porch of the home they had built, surrounded by the children they had raised, under the vast Dakota sky that had witnessed their journey from strangers to family, Willow knew with absolute certainty that some things were meant to last. Some loves were strong enough to endure any hardship. Some promises, once made, would never be broken. She had spent so many years afraid of being left behind, but in the end, what she had found was someone who would always, always stay.